Now, inaugurations on both the presidential and governorship levels are supposed to be profoundly poignant events, often the biggest day in the current life of any country, signaling a change of the political guard and bringing with it hope for a better future. Supporters beam with pride as they watch their favored politicians being sworn in. But as May the 29th approaches in Nigeria, and as the president-elect and the governors-elect prepare to have the hand and the weight of the nation laid on them, can it be said that it'll be a happy day and that this country, this tierra caliente or hot land, is at peace with itself? Or is there a long shadow hanging over that expected induction ceremony, with questions of legitimacy and credibility seeming to mock the democratic justice of that investiture? Well, let's get top-tier analysis now, and for that I'm joined in the studio by the policy strategist, political commentator and group CEO of the global investment and trade company Baba Yusuf, and by the public policy analyst Chibuzo Okereke. And from our off-site studio I'm also joined by the current affairs analyst, Professor of Communications and Deputy Dean of the Postgraduate School at Bayes University in Abuja, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Very honored to have you guys here. And let me start with you, Baba Yusuf. Just underline for us the trends that seem to be pushing Nigerians apart. How much is that driven by disagreement about who should have power?
Thank you, Charles, for having me. The critical common denominator issue is, I think, based on the erosion of confidence and trust on the top line leadership, in this case the presidency. Further down the line, if you like, we can even take it down to the subnationals, because even the subnationals are not insulated from these critical polarization issues. At state levels, you see, quarrels about which senatorial zone should take over governorship as against the one that is, aspiring to. The case may be. So what I call the common denominator issue is, the eroded confidence and trust, on the leadership, and people have now lost hope and now decide to look at candidates they feel, will take them to the promised land. And of course, the political class are the culprits, using sentiments of this ethnicity, religion, tribal sentiment, and even the regional sentiments to drive their political agenda and achieve their objectives. Why? Because it has been working over time.
That's very interesting indeed, and thank you for that opening analysis. Let me come to you, Chibuzo Okereke. Is there a sense that there are people, just coming off the back of what Baba Yusuf was saying, that there are people who by hook or by crook have managed to insinuate themselves into office, and that the unfairness of the electoral process has managed to help them hold disproportionate sway over the affairs of this country?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think that the challenge we face is the inability to manage the national question, and in fact the understanding of the national question. And that is why you see people make effort, rather than to unite the country, to promote centrifugal forces that divide the country and erode political institutions. And the understanding of how institutions work is the only process that can make Nigeria as a country, to work. If you look at, for instance, the electoral umpire with the new electoral act and the mismanagement of the provisions of that act in the lead up and even during the election, then you know why people are agitated, why people are on the street, and why people are protesting. And we have seen that over the years. We have seen from 1999 even to 2007, when the president, the late Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, acknowledged that his own elections were flawed and promised to, promote electoral reform, and that carried on till today. We are able to now transit to, technology in our election. But Outside, you now see people making effort to actually dismantle that technology process that can give people confidence, in the system. So the dismantling of the institutions of our democracy and governance process is the reason people are agitated. And people who are doing this are beneficiaries. You saw the allegation by the former Minister of Transportation that a certain group of people made sure that the INEC chairman or so were reappointed into, to power. And you could see some election in certain states looks as if INEC donated their powers to certain state functionaries to carry out the 2023 election rather than the umpire itself. And these are issues that agitate the mind of people. And when people like Dr. Dati, make some of the assertions, we have to interrogate it from a theoretical point of view. I don't think listening to him, he said inauguration cannot happen. He was theorizing and implying that when you undermine institutions and inaugurate people who emerge from flawed election, that you are by implication truncating democracy. And we should interrogate forces that has produced that effort and not try to murder the idea.
Yeah, that's an interesting angle. And Professor Adeniyi, thank you very much indeed for your patience. I mean, you and I have talked about this a lot. I mean, you're part of the very fabric of what we do here. But has the 2023 presidential election helped to ensure that the fissure won't close but is more likely to widen?
Well, I don't think so. It looks like we are recycling old issues, old challenges are once more rearing their head. We are having problem, with our differences. We are once more being reminded of our differences, and those differences have crisscrossed each other. They've crisscrossed themselves over the years, and the fact that we are being reminded of them again means that we are somewhat going back, to the primitive days. We are taking many steps backward after we have made some gains. But essentially, I think I want to relate with what Chibuzo said there. Most of the problems we have really have actually been because of the weakness of our institution, and that's why you have some thinkers have also talked about state capture, a situation where institutions are weak. In places where they are functional, they are very weak, and in some other institutions where they are not there, their functions have been completely taken over by individuals. Individuals in our climb assume the roles of institutions, sometimes groups. And when this happens, of course, you know that actions and inactions will only be on the basis of the whims and caprices of these individuals and groups. And no system, no society can function successfully like that, because it will be fluid, there will be inequity, there will be injustice, there will be all shades of fairness. And we have seen it happening a lot, in this round of election that we are just concluding. So how do we go forward, Charles? It comes back to what we've been talking about, that yes, there's a dialectical relationship between the individual and the institution. We need men, who have the political will, who are committed, who are patriotic and nationalistic enough to grow the institutions, to develop the institutions, not just to satisfy themselves, but to satisfy groups, satisfy the society at large, and ensure sustainability for the future of this country and the future of generations unborn. And that's how systems and societies grow. Systems grow not through the machinations of individuals and groups, but through the expectations of institutions. Institutions are the strengths, the pivots around which systems and societies grow. And of course, our political institution is coming into the fore here. We are discussing it now because of elections. It's not just limited to the political institutions. The economic institutions are also found wanting. One institution in this country that looks still very strong and still very helpful in sustaining the entity called Nigeria is the military institution. There are so many examples that we can draw from them, and in trying to draw those examples, it shouldn't just be at the level of wish, but it should be in action as well. And that's why we are also looking forward, with high expectation to the next administration, hoping that, yes, it will be a true renewal of hope, a true renewal of conscientious attempt at growing the institutions, not at continuing with the legacy of empowering individuals at the expense of the state, Charles.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Prof, and I will come back to you in a hot second, but that's an interesting point, Baba Yusuf, because there's got to be a way to move things forward. Is it likely that Bola Tinubu, who is, whether you like it or not, the president-elect at the moment, will be able to unite the opposing sides, or will it be near impossible for him to put in place the level of political compromise that will be required to achieve that unity?
Thank you, Charles. I think it's possible. If we look at antecedents, and if antecedents are anything to go by, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has the opportunity to demonstrate to Nigerians that he is coming at the right time, and all that we have heard or seen about him, for those that know him, are true to the paper and not pretenses of politicians. From his days during the time of the fight for democracy, the days of Nadeko, build up to the beginning of this political regime from 1999 to date. Well, it is time. I mean, he has to face that reality for him to be really productive anyway, given the situation in the country now. One of the key critical success factors moving forward is the fact that Nigerians have woken up. Nigerians are more politically conscious. Nigerians understand what is called the statement of demand from their leaders. And to be honest, Charles, I expect that to go down, trickle down to the subnationals as well. So this is a test, of leadership capacity of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And for him to achieve all that he has enumerated in the Renewed Hope agenda, manifesto, there is definitely need for him to demonstrate political dexterity, to foster unity and healing, which is one of the key points he made in his acceptance speech. That remains to be seen in action. So I expect the critical first steps will be those steps that will, engender some kind of confidence, moving on to appointments, moving on to project execution, and further engagement with the legislature and other critical stakeholders over and beyond the All Progressives Congress. Because the way it is now today in Nigeria, whoever is taking mantle of leadership at national level, at subnational level, must understand that the cohesiveness of his or her administration, will be based on how that person is able to bring people together, is able to assuage the fears. Because one of the key issues of this hue and cry is actually fear, Charles. The fear of the unknown. What is going to happen to us? Are we going to go through the same cycle again? And those questions that are not yet answers. The answers will come from the political actors, starting from the president. But I will use this opportunity to say this because it's very concerning for me. While we are talking about the incoming president, let us also not forget to have what is called peripheral vision on the critical players to the progress of Nigeria. And these are the critical leaders at the subnationals. The governors, with all due respect, have been underperforming. If you look at the revenue, sharing formula, while the federal government takes about over 52%, the states take about over 26%, while the local government takes about 20%. And we see how most of these governors are more transactional than strategic in delivering the dividends of democracy, because at that point it's closer to the grassroots, including the local government. They have stifled the local government institutions and taken over, basically refusing to adhere to the principle of devolution of powers. So Charles, to close, this is going to be a test, for the leaders, but the Nigerians have spoken. However you want to see it, moving forward is not going to be business as usual for the political class.
Well, that's a very good point there. And I suppose at the heart of what you're saying is really development. People have to look and have expectations of the country to develop. And Chibuzo Okereke, as rival political parties battle for control, what is that doing to the heart of this country, which really, as we said, should be about development across the nation?
Well, I would say first, Nigerians need to know that Senator Tinubu is not the problem of Nigeria. And this is very important because he merely exercised his democratic right to seek for an office. And other candidates also did the same. And he didn't announce himself. INEC announced him. And we have to focus our energy on the institution with the responsibility to deliver credible election, which obviously failed to a great extent in this respect. And when my brother Baba talked about Nigerians have spoken, you have to go down in history to know that this is the first time where if you put the votes of the runner-up, first, second, and third, it's almost twice of the vote of the candidate that won the election. And the man applied for the job. And that figure tells you there is a problem, because we are running first past the vote system, whereby there is no proportional allocation of anything to those who have lost. The winner takes everything, irrespective of the fact that if you add Mr. Atiku's vote to that of Obi and Kwankwaso, you'll be getting nearly 16 million votes. Now, those 16 million people are saying this thing did not go in the right direction, as against 8-point-something million. And definitely there's going to be a challenge. And I found the speech made by Senator Tinubu when he won the primaries, very tough primary, more unifying than what is going on now. His media handlers are behaving as if the election is well ahead. They are not acting like they have a president-elect already, spending time to unpack the agenda of the president-elect and what have you, and whet the hope of Nigerians. And for the rival parties, what is necessary is that they have already approached the court. They have to have confidence in the judicial process. The agitation for the court hearing to be live on the national and international television is something the judiciary will have to agree with now to give Nigerians confidence and trust. I'll tell you something. In Kenya, for instance, there is an arrangement of what they call National Forgiveness Day. Usually after the election, some months after the election, all the key gladiators will come together, confess in quotes their sins and actions, and then people forgive each other. The gladiators hug each other, symbolism of national unity and cohesion. What we expect, we don't have that kind of arrangement in Nigeria. In fact, issue of a State of the Nation address from a president in Nigeria has been stored in the National Assembly. So we need to move forward as a country. Gladiators need to come together and unite and know that we have in the statecraft, without the people, there is no state. The people is the fundamental character of a state. And when the people are disillusioned, lack hope, you need to whet their hope and inspire confidence in them. Yeah.
That's a good point. Let me come to you, Professor Adeniyi, because, I mean, Chibuzo Okereke there talked about the elections, and that seems to be a recurring theme. I mean, is that the epicenter of this political crisis in your assessment? Is it the perception that this election was not free and fair, or has it metamorphosed into religion and ethnicity and the feeling that parts of this country are not being treated fairly when it comes to political leadership because of the, if you like, asphyxiating control exerted by other parts?
Quite a lot of issues that you raised in that question, Charles, But first, we need to understand that the election was keenly contested. This is the first time that we're going to have an election that is so close in about 20, or since the Fourth Republic, so to say. The election was keenly contested, and against that background, it was expected that the outcome was also going to be highly disputed. So I'm not too surprised that we've witnessed this level of disputation, this level of contestation of the election. And that's why we should continue to be gratified that we have a legitimate constitutional recourse, constitutional route, for the ventilation of our disappointment, our irritation with the outcome of the election, which is the courts. And of course, we are happy that aggrieved parties have also resorted to the courts, but again, do not forget that there's a heavy weight now. There's a high level of expectation on the part of the courts, and that's why, frontline legal minds are saying that the courts or the judiciary should probably live up to expectation and try to dispense the case as quickly as possible, even ahead of swearing in. Even though again that our constitution does not provide for that. The constitution provides for a longer time than what some minds are presently advocating. While some of these issues will continue to be in conversation, they will continue to be topics that we'll be discussing. But I think the overall thing is for us to just keep the peace, be tolerant of each other, and allow processes and procedures, to pull through, because order is very, very important. If we have, God forbid, we have a state of disorder, you probably don't know where it's going to end. Most of the time, we know when crises begin, but we often hardly know when it's going to end. But of course, fundamental to your question again is around ethnicity, the power game, which section has had power and which section hasn't had it. This question will continue, and it's a very painful one at that, because all democracy is about integration and inclusion. We cannot be tired of saying this, and we know the core main sections in this country. We know those who have been integrated largely, and we know those who feel a sense of marginalization. And the onus is always on a kind of fragile system like this to ensure that they are highly representative, that they are highly integrative, to give everybody not just a sense of belonging, but a feeling of ownership of the nation that we are of the nation state that we're trying to build into a nation, as the case could be. It's a work in progress. It's not necessarily a destination. It's a journey. But the point again we should emphasize is that we're actually a little bit slower than we could be. We can move faster if we're really conscientious. If we're cosmopolitan, expanded in our thoughts, realizing that we're not just existing for ourselves, we should be existing for others, especially in a nation filled with difference, where we are completely, where there's high level of heterogeneity. And we also realize that there's no system that is completely homogeneous, neither is there any system that is completely heterogeneous. It is just about management. I'm sure that we have grown well enough to be able to manage our own heterogeneity. And this dispensation, this transition, delicate as it is another opportunity for us to attempt doing this. And of course, once more, Charles, the ball is back to the course of the incoming administration.
That's a good point, Prof. And in those circumstances, Baba Yusuf, what sort of tough choices lie ahead for Mr. Tinubu? Can he just ignore the parts of the country that don't agree with him or support him, as some accuse President Buhari of doing? Or is it better for him to welcome both friend and foe as part and parcel of political life in Nigeria?
I reckon that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu will be more, expansive in his engagements. He will be more nationalistic, based on his antecedents and based on the current political, socio-economic reality of Nigeria. I believe he wants Nigeria to grow. He wants Nigeria to progress under his watch. I don't believe he wants his name to go down in history as a man that came to take mantle of leadership and things go worse than he met it. So I want to believe based on that. And of course, based on his political antecedents, understanding the nooks and crannies of Nigeria and the fact that Nigeria is blessed by the best of the best from every nook and cranny of Nigeria. North, south, east, west, you can get the best of whatever you want. So it makes it easy for him to form a team to engage leaders and people from various school of thoughts and classes to make form a government and to drive a government that will work, and move us forward as a nation.
That's a good point. And Chibuzo Okereke, what difficulties do you expect that he'll face in that context? How scorched, if you like, is the political landscape in this country, given that many Nigerians believe that the APC decided that winning the election was more important than maintaining democracy?
Well, I think that he's going to have a tough time. There is no doubt. And some of the media lords that are around him are already, making the situation very difficult with the kind of post and statement we see. But I acknowledge that he's a veteran in the field. He's very knowledgeable, and I'm sure that he will understand the importance of engagement, expansive engagement, like Baba mentioned. Very key is that those national questions we need to answer. You begin to address them, as a president. But again, also, the APC, they didn't focus attention on leadership. So now the president-elect will have that responsibility to unite the country while building the expectations of people on the court process, because that is very key. Most of the people you see today who are against the president-elect, and I have said, he is not the person we should focus attention on. Attention should be focused on the electoral umpire and the government of the day that promised, even at the level of United Nations, to deliver credible election. Focusing attention on somebody who exercises democratic right and was declared winner is not the best way to go. Okay. And we have to agree on this, and the president-elect have to know this is a very tough job. For me, he should start even visiting a different senatorial district to engage and not just allow some leaders to make decisions on his behalf.
Okay, and I'm going to give the last word to you, Prof, because we've got less than a minute. I mean, you touched on this earlier, but some pundits have suggested that one of the most toxic issues, which is a real tinder for crisis, is the issue of ethnic animosity and the idea of who counts as one of us, and that people of a different ethnicity aren't like you, can't be trusted, or don't deserve what you deserve. How do you assess that issue? And we've got less than a minute.
Yeah, I think it's something that leadership can do a lot about, and it's just about engendering confidence. Like one of my colleagues said there, it's about reassuring citizens living everywhere, anywhere at all, that Nigeria belongs to all of us. And not just making this reassurance, but taking concrete steps to protect them, from harassment, from intimidation, in the future, they are free to belong to any political group, to do any business that they want to do, and of course, you protect them, give them this assurance. So it becomes very easy for the animosity that has reigned before now to fizzle out. And once more, we'll be back, the ship of state will be back on a smooth sail. But more importantly, Charles, I think it's also very important, for the incoming administration to identify, the most pained, or the most grieving, the most hot section of the country, and make some specific moves, take specific actions to assuage their feelings, because once more we have made this point severally, and we cannot be tired of making it that it's all about integration, it's all about continuous process of consensus and peace building.
Right. On that note, positive note, I should say, I want to thank all of you very much indeed. Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, who's a current affairs analyst, professor of communications and deputy dean of the postgraduate school at Bayes University in Abuja. Baba Yusuf, who's a policy strategist, political commentator and group CEO of the Global Investment and Trade Company, and of course Chibuzo Okereke, who's a public policy analyst. Thank you very much indeed. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again next week. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye and thank you for watching.